My name is Avery Collins, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a systems analyst for a mid-sized tech company in Seattle, the kind of job that sounds impressive at family dinners, but mostly involves solving the same problems over and over while pretending they're new. It pays well, though. Well enough that I moved into my own apartment at 24, after grinding through 3 years of soul-sucking entry-level IT work where I spent half my day explaining to grown adults why clicking suspicious links was not, in fact, a bold career move. My apartment wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Open-plan living room, neutral walls, a desk I built myself from reclaimed wood and metal piping, 2 monitors for work, 1 for gaming, a custom-built PC I'd saved months for. My setup was my sanctuary. Order in a world that constantly felt loud. And then there was Atlas, my German Shepherd mix. 80 pounds of muscle, anxiety, and unconditional loyalty. I rescued him with Ethan 3 years into our relationship, and from day one, Atlas decided I was his person. Slept at my feet, followed me from room to room, guarded me like his life depended on it. Ethan used to joke that Atlas loved me more. At the time, it felt harmless. Ethan and I met 5 years ago at a friend's housewarming party. I was nursing a drink in the corner, making sarcastic commentary to myself about the playlist, when Ethan somehow slid into the conversation like he'd always been there. He was easy to talk to, thoughtful, the kind of man who listened instead of waiting for his turn to speak. We clicked fast, not explosively, but steadily, comfortably, like 2 people who didn't need to perform to be liked. We moved in together after 18 months, split bills, built routines, grocery lists on the fridge, Sunday morning coffee walks, late night takeout when neither of us wanted to cook. It felt like adulthood done right. For a long time, I thought I'd won the relationship lottery. But even in those early days, there was another presence. Subtle, quiet, easy to dismiss. Lena, Ethan's ex-girlfriend. They hadn't dated long, he said. It just didn't work. But somehow they stayed best friends. Texted daily, shared inside jokes, knew each other's passwords. At first, I told myself it was a green flag. Proof of maturity. Proof that Ethan wasn't the jealous, controlling type. But Lena was everywhere. Not physically at first, emotionally. Ethan's phone buzzed constantly. During dinner, during movies, during conversations that suddenly trailed off mid-sentence because Lena needed advice. If we were choosing a restaurant, Ethan would pause and say, "Let me see what Lena thinks." If we talked about a weekend trip, he'd mention, "Lena says that area is overrated." It started as background noise. Then it became the soundtrack. Lena had a way of inserting herself without ever showing up. Her opinions filtered into our decisions, like they were facts. My preferences quietly lost weight. Ethan's certainty eroded. I noticed it most when plans changed. Once, I scored tickets to a tech and gaming convention I'd been excited about for months. VIP passes, meet and greet. I told Ethan weeks in advance. He seemed genuinely excited. 2 hours before we were supposed to leave, Lena called. She was crying about a bad date, something about being ghosted, again. Ethan hesitated. I watched the internal debate cross his face. Guilt versus obligation, loyalty versus convenience. "I should stay," he said finally. "She really needs me." I went alone. At the convention, my phone buzzed nonstop. Ethan asking how it was going, sending updates. Meanwhile, he also sent pictures of him and Lena on the couch, eating ice cream, watching some romance movie, smiling. I smiled back, told him it was fine. But it didn't feel fine. By year 3, Lena's presence stopped being subtle. She went through a messy breakup, and suddenly, she was always around, emotionally, logistically, spiritually. She showed up unannounced, needed Ethan's advice on everything, had emergencies that somehow always aligned with our plans. Friends noticed. One night after Lena crashed our date night for the 3rd time that month, a friend pulled me aside and said, "Avery, you know she's sabotaging this, right?" I laughed it off, said they were overthinking it. Deep down, I knew they weren't. Around that time, Ethan started coming home with concerns that didn't sound like him. My hobbies were suddenly immature. My gaming was excessive. My job, the one he used to brag about, wasn't ambitious enough anymore. Worse, the things I did for him disappeared from the narrative. The mornings I woke up early so he could sleep in. The weekends I took Atlas out alone so Ethan could relax. The support I gave him when he was stressed or uncertain. None of it counted. What counted was how I didn't measure up to the version of a partner Lena thought he deserved. I tried talking to Ethan about her influence. He shut it down immediately. She just wants what's best for me. You're being paranoid. You're reading into things that aren't there. Gaslighting wrapped in reassurance. One night, after another canceled plan, I stood in our living room and really looked around. The framed photos I'd hung, the plants I watered, the dog asleep at my feet. And a thought hit me so clearly it took my breath away. I wasn't losing Ethan. I was slowly being replaced by someone who never left. There were 3 people in my relationship, and I was the only one who didn't agree to it. I got sick on a Thursday. Not the dramatic kind of sick you joke about, not the sniffles you power through with coffee and denial. This was the kind that hit like a wall. Fever spiking past 102. Chills so violent my teeth wouldn't stop chattering. My body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled overnight. The timing couldn't have been worse. I'd been pulling 14-hour days on a major system migration at work, the kind of project where everything is urgent and nothing can fail. Caffeine replaced meals. Sleep became optional. By the time Thursday morning rolled around, my immune system waved a white flag and clocked out. I remember waking up drenched in sweat, the room spinning slightly as I tried to sit up. Atlas whined at the side of the bed, pressing his nose into my hand like he could tell something was wrong. I barely made it to the bathroom before collapsing onto the cold tile floor, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. I don't ask for help easily. I never have. But this was different. Ethan was supposed to leave that afternoon for a weekend wine tasting trip with Lena and a few of their friends, something they'd been planning for months. I knew it mattered to him. I knew canceling would cause friction. But lying there, shivering, barely able to stand, I realized I needed him. So I asked, "Could you maybe stay?" I said quietly, my voice raw. "Just for tonight, until I'm stable." At first, he seemed understanding. He felt my forehead, frowned at the thermometer, even texted Lena to say he might need to postpone. For about an hour, I thought it was handled. Then he came back into the bedroom, phone in hand, jaw tight. "Lena thinks I shouldn't miss the trip," he said carefully. "She says you're an adult and can take care of yourself." I stared at him, trying to process the words through the fever haze. "She thinks I'm being manipulative," he added, "like using being sick to control you." Something inside me went very still. I was shaking, literally shaking. My muscles trembled under the blankets as sweat soaked through the sheets. And Ethan stood there, relaying his ex-girlfriend's opinion like it was a verdict. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just turned my face toward the wall and said, "Do whatever you want." He left the next morning while I was sleeping. When I woke up, the apartment felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. I dragged myself to the kitchen and realized he'd taken the good thermometer and almost all the toilet paper. It was such a small thing, so stupid. But when you're sick, alone, and barely functioning, small things feel enormous. I spent that day drifting in and out of fever dreams, unsure if the shadow in the corner of the room was my coat or something my brain invented. Atlas barely left my side. Every time I moved, he stood up, alert, like he was guarding me from something unseen. By the afternoon, I realized I couldn't do this alone. I texted my friend Maya, the kind of person who doesn't ask questions, just shows up. She arrived with soup, electrolyte drinks, and a no-nonsense expression that immediately told me she'd already formed an opinion about Ethan's absence. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She stayed for hours, took Atlas out, made sure I ate something, sat on the couch, scrolling on her phone, letting me drift in and out of sleep without feeling alone. That night, Ethan didn't call. He texted once, a picture of wine glasses clinking. "Hope you're feeling better." I turned my phone face down. When he came back Sunday evening, I was still weak but functional. He acted like nothing had happened, talked for an hour straight about the vineyards, the views, how Lena got hit on by the owner's son. I nodded along, watching his mouth move, feeling like I was listening to someone describe a trip they took while my life paused. He never asked how I had managed. 2 days later, he grew distant, cold, distracted, phone glued to his hand. Short answers. I assumed he was upset about something, maybe guilt, maybe lingering tension from the weekend. I gave him space. Friday night, I came home from work and found him sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, posture stiff. "We need to talk," he said. The words hit my stomach like a warning siren. He launched into a speech that felt rehearsed, too polished, too precise. He used phrases I'd never heard him say before. Red flags, emotional labor, codependency, controlling behavior. He said asking him to stay while I was sick was manipulative, that expressing discomfort about Lena's constant presence was isolating him from his support system, that I'd created an unhealthy dynamic. It felt like listening to someone read a script they didn't fully understand. I pointed it out. "This doesn't sound like you," I said. "It sounds like Lena." His eyes flashed. "Not everything is about Lena. These are my feelings. Period." Then he dropped the bomb. He needed space to reevaluate, and he thought it would be best if I moved out for a while. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. "This is my apartment too," I said. "If you need space, you can go stay with her." He cried then, said I was being difficult, that my reaction proved his point, that I was toxic. I didn't argue. I packed a bag and went to Maya's place to clear my head. The next morning, I woke up to a text. He wanted to make the break permanent. He'd arranged to pick up his things while I was at work. 5 years. Ended by text. I sat in my car outside the office for 20 minutes, staring at the screen, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. I wasn't crying. I felt hollow, like something essential had been removed without anesthesia. The next 2 weeks blurred together. I let Ethan take whatever was his. I reclaimed my space piece by piece, moved furniture, reorganized shelves. Atlas adjusted quickly. He always does. Loyal to the end. When Ethan texted just checking in, I replied with one-word answers. When he called 3 weeks later saying maybe he'd reacted too quickly, I asked one question. "Have you talked to Lena about this?" Silence. "That's not what this is about," he finally said. That told me everything. I said, "I'm good," and hung up. Blocked his number. Later, I found out Lena had left town temporarily for work, which explained his sudden clarity. Funny how that works. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done competing with someone who never had to play fair. And that's when things took a turn I never saw coming. Because a week later, my phone buzzed. And her name was on the screen. The message came in at 9:17 a.m. I remember because I was standing in line at a coffee shop, half awake, staring at the menu like it might reveal the meaning of life if I focused hard enough. Atlas was finally settling into our new routine. Work was busy in a way that kept my brain occupied. For the first time since the breakup, I wasn't actively bracing for the next emotional hit. Then my phone buzzed. Lena. For a second, I thought it was a glitch. Some leftover group chat notification. My thumb hovered over the screen, my stomach tightening with that old, familiar dread. "Hey, Avery. I know this might be weird, but I just wanted to check in on you." I almost laughed. This woman had spent years orbiting my relationship like a parasite with a calendar. She'd watched it rot from the inside, and now she wanted to check in. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message came through. "Ethan told me you two talked. I honestly think he handled things really badly. You didn't deserve that." I stared at the screen, the words rearranging themselves into something far uglier than their polite packaging. "You didn't deserve that," as if she hadn't engineered it. I sent a screenshot to Maya with a single caption. "Is this real life?" Maya replied immediately. "Oh, she's bold. Over the next 2 days, the messages kept coming. Each one warmer than the last. More personal, less subtle. "I always thought you were such a grounded person. Ethan never appreciated what he had. I wish we'd gotten to know each other better." That last one landed with a thud. It wasn't concern, it was positioning. The realization snapped into place so cleanly it almost felt satisfying. With Ethan suddenly untethered and spiraling, Lena had lost her favorite audience. And now she was looking for a new one. Me. I didn't feel flattered. I felt tired. Still, I didn't shut it down right away. Instead, I watched. Observed the pattern the way my brain always does when something feels off. Timing, language, escalation. Every message carefully calibrated to test boundaries, to see how much access she could regain. Then came the selfie. Casual, soft lighting. Just enough cleavage to pretend it wasn't intentional. Just saying hi. I exhaled slowly and locked my phone. That night, I told Maya everything. Then I told Noah, another close friend who'd known Ethan for years and had never liked Lena. By the end of the evening, my living room felt like a war room. "She's trying to flip the narrative," Maya said. "Make you the prize. Twist the knife." Noah nodded. "And if Ethan finds out, it'll destroy him." I didn't smile. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I just want the truth out in the open." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Then let's give her the stage." The plan came together faster than I expected. I replied to Lena the next morning. "You're right, we should talk. There's a new cafe downtown I've been meaning to try." Her response was immediate. "I'd love that." The cafe was bright and airy, all exposed brick and hanging plants. I arrived early and chose a table with a clear view of the entrance, ordered coffee, sat calmly, waited. Lena walked in 10 minutes later, and I almost didn't recognize her. Hair styled, makeup flawless, outfit carefully chosen to read effortless but intentional. She scanned the room, spotted me, and smiled like she'd already won something. She took 3 steps toward the table and stopped. Because I wasn't alone. Maya stood up first, then Noah, then Jess, a mutual friend of Lena's who'd quietly distanced herself months ago, her face drained of color in real time. "What's this?" Lena asked, forcing a laugh that cracked at the edges. I stood too, meeting her eyes evenly. "Oh," I said lightly. "I figured since you've always been such a fan of inserting yourself into other people's relationships, you'd appreciate a group setting." She sputtered. "This is completely inappropriate." Jess crossed her arms. So was messaging Avery the second her relationship imploded. Lena's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You're twisting things," she snapped. "I was just being supportive." "Really?" Noah said. "Because you did the same thing to me, and to Jess, and to at least 2 other people I can name." Jess nodded. She tried to date my ex 2 weeks after convincing me he was holding me back. The silence that followed was loud. Lena grabbed her purse, her hands shaking now. "You're all insane," she said. "This is harassment." She turned and left, heels clicking too fast, posture rigid with humiliation. We stayed, ordered coffee, sat there for over an hour, trading stories that all sounded disturbingly similar. Patterns I'd only seen pieces of before now, fully exposed. That afternoon, Jess sent me screenshots. Messages of Lena trashing me behind my back, complaining about how codependent Ethan had become, how inconvenient it was that I existed at all. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. Ethan tried reaching out 2 days later. Long apology. Admitted he'd been manipulated. Said he finally saw it now. I didn't respond. The last time I saw him was a week later at Target. He spotted me in the electronics aisle and hurried over, eyes red, voice shaking. "Avery, can we talk?" I gestured to my cart. Frozen pizza, energy drinks, a new game I'd been excited about. "This is me," I said calmly, "the person you thought wasn't enough." Then I walked away. That night, back in my apartment, Atlas curled up beside me as I painted the living room a deep blue Ethan always vetoed. The space felt lighter, quieter. Mine. I wasn't broken. I was rebuilding. And for the first time in a long time, I trusted myself again. The strange thing about endings is how quiet they become once the noise fades. After the cafe, after the screenshots, after Ethan's apology text I never answered, life didn't explode into some dramatic rebirth montage. There was no instant glow-up, no triumphant music swelling in the background. There was just space. For the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz with someone else's priorities. No second-guessing my plans. No invisible committee weighing in on my decisions. When I said yes to something, it stayed a yes. When I said no, no one tried to negotiate it. The apartment changed first. I painted the living room a deep, moody blue, the color Ethan had always said felt too heavy. I moved the furniture around until it made sense to me. I turned the corner by the window into a proper workspace, bought a chair I'd been eyeing for months, mounted shelves for my books and collectibles without asking for approval. It felt symbolic, reclaiming square footage that had slowly stopped feeling like mine. Atlas thrived in the quiet. His routine adjusted seamlessly, like he'd been waiting for this version of our life. Morning runs with me before work, afternoon naps in the sunny patch by the window, evenings curled up beside me while I unwound. No tension in the air, no raised voices, no slammed doors. Work noticed the change before I did. About a month after the breakup, my manager pulled me aside and told me he'd seen a shift in my leadership. More decisiveness, more confidence, less hesitation. I got promoted shortly after, not because I suddenly became better at my job, but because I stopped doubting every choice I made. Funny how that works. My friendships deepened too. Maya started coming over every Thursday night for dinner. Noah introduced me to his friends, people who didn't know my history and didn't need it explained. Laughter came easier. Conversations didn't feel like walking on emotional glass. And then slowly, without fanfare, something else changed. I stopped replaying the past. I stopped wondering if I could have handled things differently. Stopped rewriting conversations in my head, searching for the moment I lost control of the narrative. The truth was uncomfortable but freeing. I hadn't lost control. I'd never had it. Someone else had been writing the script the entire time. I ran into Ethan one last time about 2 months later. Not dramatically, not intentionally. We crossed paths at a grocery store, of all places. He looked thinner, tired, like someone who'd only recently realized the cost of letting other people think for him. He opened his mouth to speak. I didn't stop walking. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was peace. A few weeks after that, I met Lucas. We crossed paths at a tech conference. Nothing romantic at first, just a conversation that flowed without effort. He didn't flinch when I talked about my work, didn't tease my hobbies, didn't need constant reassurance. He had his own life, his own friends, his own opinions. When I mentioned gaming, he smiled and asked what I played. When I said I liked my independence, he nodded like it made sense instead of feeling threatened. We took things slow, on purpose. The first time he came over, Atlas sniffed him once, then settled at his feet. That felt like a good sign. What struck me most wasn't how different Lucas was from Ethan. It was how easy everything felt. No triangulation, no whispered doubts, no third voice hovering in the background. Just two adults choosing each other, deliberately. One night, months later, we hiked the mountain trail Ethan and I never made it to. The same one that had been canceled because someone else's needs mattered more. I stood at the overlook, lungs burning, heart full, and laughed. Not because it was ironic, but because it finally felt right. I thought about Lena once in a while, mostly out of curiosity. From what I heard, her circle had shrunk. Patterns have a way of revealing themselves when there's no one left to distract from them. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt relief. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see then. Love doesn't erode you slowly. You don't become smaller overnight. It happens in inches, in canceled plans, borrowed opinions, dismissed discomfort. In moments where you tell yourself it's easier not to speak up. Until one day you realize you've been edited out of your own life. Walking away wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. And choosing myself wasn't an act of defiance. It was an act of survival. If there's one thing this taught me, it's this. When someone shows you who they are through small, repeated choices, believe them. And never stay in a relationship where your voice